GA side, the F-18 was our first application on the military side, and we're on a large percentage of military hardware that leaves the ground these days: fighters, cargo transports, rotorcraft, you name it, and we're on it. And then probably what put us on the map was the F-117. We worked on that battery for a number of years, really didn't know what we were doing. We knew it was through Lockheed because Skip Koss, who was our venerable leader for many, many years, used to go down to Burbank and talk to the engineers. And then in November of '88, there was a picture published of the F-117 against a snowy backdrop of the Sierra Nevadas. And we got a phone call from the colonel in charge of the project, and he told Skip that we were sole source on that battery until they were parked in '09. The cool thing is they've been parked that long, and about 20 months ago, we were asked to build a pallet of batteries for the F-117s. Had no idea what they were doing with them, but we spotted them. We didn't. I said they were spotted about a month ago, flying one of the low-level routes up in Palmdale. And what they're doing is they're using them as aggressor squadron aircraft. I'm just glad they're not using them as drones, which is what they did back with the F-4 Phantoms in its final days. That was my favorite aircraft. But anyway, so it's a great company. We pivot on a dime. We're very accessible to everybody, as Scott has demonstrated here. We're happy to come out and talk because knowledge is power. And if it makes you safe, that's the number one goal. So as far as battery safety is concerned, just a couple things. One, the battery you guys typically use has a rope on it, which is great because not all of them do. So it makes that battery a little easier to move around. If you are going to be holding it by those plastic sides, chances are you're going to have a sheen of sweat on your hands. So maybe a pair of engine gloves, anything that'll give you a little better grip on that battery is kind of the way to go if you're not going to use that rope handle. And then shock hazards. We've kind of known this since we were teenagers. You don't want to ever arc across the terminals or anything like that. So make sure that the battery terminal covers that come with your battery when you open the box, that you hang on to them. So when the battery's not connected, just keep those covered. It makes it very, very easy. Okay, so pillar one, installation. So, back in the old days when you installed or commissioned a flooded battery, it's a 16-hour charge. And then they had to be capacity tested because flooded batteries are not airworthy out of the factory, out of anybody's factory. We quit making them back in 2012, 13. And then they have to be recharged, which is a 3 or 4 hour process. So it's quite a bit of time to properly commission a flooded battery. With sealed batteries, it's as simple as taking them out of the box, checking the open circuit voltage, and putting them in the airplane, because we actually capacity test our batteries twice before they leave the factory and head to our distributors. And it's not a lot test. We don't pull them off of the just one off of a pallet. We actually test all of them twice before they come to you. But here's one thing that is very important about installation that few people actually do. And that is, when you get a battery from your distributor, when you get that box in the hangar, the first thing I want you to do is grab a voltmeter and put a voltmeter on that battery. Open circuit voltage of a fully charged 24-volt battery is 25.8, or just a shade over that. So anything down to 25.6, go ahead and install it in the airplane. I'm assuming you might be going flying right after you put that battery in. If not, go ahead and put it on a charger. But if you're going to put it in and go flying, you'll get that battery fully charged in an hour or so. But if it's from 25.5 down to 25.0, you need to put that battery on a charger for a few hours. It's really important to install a fully charged battery into an aircraft, because if you don't, you stand a good chance of never getting ahead of the curve and getting it fully charged. And you don't ever want to have it in any state of discharge for really any period of time. Remember what I said, the secret to making them last is to keep them fully charged. So if it's from 25.0 down to, or 25.5 down to 25.0, if it's under that, there's a 24 in the number, 24.9, I want you to call your distributor and get another battery. And then I would also like a phone call from you as well, because I have to love my distributors like I love my kids. I have to love them equally, but not all of them do a good job of first in, first out. Now, for the most part, they do. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but it's important enough that you check that open circuit voltage when you get that battery. Because here's what happens if you don't. let's say you get one, you don't check it, and it's around 24.9. That means it's been sitting on the shelf for an extended period of time at the warehouse, and it's self-discharged. Sulfation has begun. And so probably in the next 8, 10, 12 months, but certainly much less time than you're expecting to get out of that battery, it's going to fail. And you're not going to be mad at Spruce or whoever you got the battery from. You're going to be mad at Concorde, and it's going to enter your mind that we don't make a good battery. But that's not what happened in that case. So the way we prevent that is we check that open circuit voltage. If you're good to go, you simply install it in the airplane, make your logbook entry. And by the way, guys, your warranty starts the date you install the battery, and it's good for 2 years. So other thing on installation, torque value is kind of important. If you look at that crack in that epoxy there, that's an easy one to see. Normally they crack along that plastic dam that's holding the epoxy in. It's one of the last steps in the process. So if you over torque them, because 70 inch-pounds is the torque value on these bolts, and there's a sticker on the battery that tells you so, you get up around 100.5, 155, you can crack that epoxy. If you do, you are eventually going to see corrosion at the terminal bolts of a Concorde battery, because typically you won't. And the reason is those are bronze silicon alloy terminal posts. It's copper. And the reason we do that is because the ring terminals on your aircraft are copper. It's not a matter of if, but when you're going to have corrosion if you put unlike metals together. Now, our competitor that uses the pink case, they've been steel forever. And I don't understand it because it's going to create corrosion. So if you get a crack like that, if you over torque it, you're eventually going to see some corrosion. And then if you get up above 200, you can actually crack the brass. So it's wise to use a torque wrench, if for no other reason, guys, than to get used to what tight feels like. So if you don't happen to have one and you're transient, you got to replace it, you'll kind of know where you need to be. But it's really important to pay attention to it. Okay, so pillar 2, battery killers, voltage regulators, and parasitic loads. Voltage regulators, to answer the question here, is you need to check those annually. And this is the chart that you're looking at. Let me give you some simple math. You want your voltage regulator setting to be around from 27.6 to 28.4. That's your range. Now, if you have an adjustable regulator and you are willing to adjust it twice a year, in the wintertime, you want to run it up to the high end of the range, to the 28.2, 28.3, even 28.4. And then in the summertime, run it down to the low end, 27.6, 7, or 8. That will actually extend your battery life, because a little bit of overcharging can occur from time to time. And when it does, it begins to dry out those AGM mats. And that can also shorten the life of your battery. But if you're overcharging your battery, you're going to dry out the mats. If you're undercharging your battery, it's never going to get fully charged. The sulfation starts to build, and that spells the beginning of the end. So voltage regulators have a tendency to drift over time. And so what we recommend is that, during annual, you make sure you have a conversation with your mechanic. I want you to check my voltage regulator. Now, chances are they're going to do it, but I like to have direct communication. And one of the things in this presentation is, hey, check my voltage regulator and make sure that it's charging properly. So the other one is parasitic loads. What's a parasitic load? So everything's turned off on the aircraft, but there's still a draw on the battery. That's what a parasitic load is. They are rampant in the aviation community these days. Aircraft are getting older. Aircraft are getting redone. And USB ports are being installed and all kinds of cool avionics. And so there's just more and more opportunity for there to be, some sort of draw on the battery. Things wear out, things touch, just more opportunity for it. So if you are losing your battery on a consistent basis much earlier than you should be, and you feel like, you're flying reasonably often enough, if you're not, you're getting the battery recharged, and still batteries aren't lasting, chances are you got a parasitic load. So the way that you check for that, very, very simply, you want to remove the negative battery cable off of the battery, and then you want to connect one of your meter leads to the negative cable. And then you want to connect the other meter lead to the negative terminal and check your meter. If it's moving and you want to put it down to the most sensitive setting, if it's moving, you've got a parasitic load. Now, clocks, obviously, they're in there, especially in older aircraft that haven't had any work done. Very, very small draw. We're talking about, more than a couple of milliamps. For instance, the TBM 700 series has a 17 milliamp draw. It's so bad the pilot operating handbook says you got to disconnect the battery when you get out of the airplane because it will kill the battery in pretty short order. So just check for it if you need to, if you feel like you're losing your batteries in short order. So pillar 3, capacity testing. Why start with this slide if we're talking about capacity testing? Well, this gives you kind of a better idea of why capacity testing is important and why it is specific in what it performs. So, like I said earlier, the open circuit voltage of a fully charged 24-volt battery is 25.8. And you can see the voltmeter on this RG390E that's up in our lab, and it says 2583. So you look at that, and at first blush, you think, well, that battery's probably healthy. It's taking a full charge. But in point of fact, as I said, that's up in our lab, that battery has 8 minutes of essential power in it. You hook it up to a capacity tester, and in 8 minutes, it would reach the endpoint voltage. It would be over. And the reason for that is there is sulfation on the plates. And so, when you charge a battery, the point of the matter here is that you don't want to let your voltmeter tell you, because it can't, what the state of health of the battery is. State of charge and state of health are two entirely different things. And the only way to know the state of health of a battery, of an aircraft battery, is to do a capacity test. So don't use your voltmeter to determine. And if you go to annual, okay, and you ask, hey, did you do a cap check? And the mechanic goes, yeah, we charged it up. Everything's good. It's time to find a new mechanic or educate him that no, charging it up ain't checking it. It needs to be capacity tested. Now, the unfortunate reality is far too many shops don't have a capacity tester. And Scott and I have talked about this off and on the last few days, but it's a shame. And the shops that do have them, especially the bigger ones, charge inordinate amounts of money for a capacity test, 5, 6. There's one that even charges $700. And I've begged with all shops, on the GA side of things, because from a pragmatic standpoint, that's almost as much as a new battery. And so a lot of people say, well, I'll just fly it till it doesn't work anymore. But that is a dangerous game to play, especially if you fly IFR. So I've begged shops for years, hey, for the GA guys, how about we charge them 100, 150 bucks? I mean, you're not peddling the machine. It's an hour process, 3 or 4 hours to charge it back up. You're doing a service to your customer. You're assuring airworthiness of battery. You're keeping everybody safe if something were to go wrong and you'd lose the alternator or the generator. So there's a lot of very, very good reasons why you want to do it. But point of the slide, don't pay attention to the voltmeter. So capacity testing, what is it? Well, it's very simple. Every certified aircraft battery has a sticker on the front of it, and it has it says C1, and then it will have an amp hour rating. And for your battery, the RG2416, that's a 13.6 amp hour battery. So the way this works is when an aircraft manufacturer is building a new airplane and they figure out all the stuff that they're going to put in it, then they come up with what they call essential power requirements. What do we need this aircraft to operate, function? What needs to function to be able to get the pilot out of trouble should he lose his alternator generators? They come up with a number, and that's the essential power requirements. It could be 9 amps, it could be 5 amps, it could be 30 amps, depending on the aircraft. And so then that's when they come to us and say, okay, we need this battery and this amp rate, and hopefully you've got it in this footprint. And that's kind of the big deal with aircraft manufacturers. They want the absolute most power we can give them in the smallest footprint we can cram it into. And the way we accomplish that is in aircraft batteries, we make the plates very thin. In your vehicle that's out in your driveway, the plates are really thick. They're designed for abuse, thousands of starts. So aircraft batteries have really thin plates in them because every plate represents a modicum of power. And so the downside to that is they are susceptible to a little too much voltage for too long. So you've got to be really careful when you're charging these batteries. They can take up to 8 times the C1 rate. So at 13.6 amps, hey, that's rough math, 100 amps. Not any chargers I don't think you're going to find that'll give you that. Most of them will go up to 25 amps. There's a few out there that'll go to 50, but they're not rate sensitive. But you do have to control the voltage when you're charging your batteries. That's why it's so important. That's why we harp on the voltage regulators. It's why we harp on a specific maintainer to use. All of that's important to ultimately to make the batteries last as long as they can. Okay, so cap test, you're basically testing for minimum capacity for airworthiness. Um, and so that back to our original point, the C1 rate represents if it's an airworthy battery, you would get 13.6 amps out of an RG2416 for a minimum of 51 minutes for it to be airworthy. Because the idea is that no aircraft emergencies really last more than an hour. Up until 1977, they were rated at a 5-hour rate, and Skip was at the International Battery Conference, and he said, "Why do we have 5-hour aircraft batteries, rated batteries? We don't have 5-hour aircraft emergencies." And so the decision was made, and in 77, aircraft batteries were rated at a 1-hour rate. So it's very easy to take a look at it and go, okay, if it's healthy, that's what it's going to give me. The FAA and GIL use 80%, and 43132B, they do talk about 85%. People ask me all the time why ours is different, because Concorde's minimum capacity for airworthiness is 85%. And the answer is pretty simple. It's just an added margin of safety. It's really no more complicated than that. So a cap test procedure is a pretty simple thing, although you do need a bench unit to perform it. And what you're going to do is you're going to start with a fully charged battery. Now, don't forget, when we were still in school, if we had a test tomorrow that we cared about, we'd probably eat a good dinner, we'd get a good night's sleep, and we'd surely study. And so you want to give that opportunity to your battery as well. So make sure you put that battery on a charge. Check the open circuit voltage, see where it stands, put it on charge for a few hours, make sure that it's ready to go. And then what that cap tester is going to do is it's going to discharge the battery at the C1 rate, which is 13.6 amps C1. And then when you get to the endpoint voltage, which for a 24-volt battery is 20 volts, for a 12-volt battery, it's 10. Then you're just going to check the time. If you've made it to 51 minutes, you've got an airworthy battery. If the battery goes 55 minutes before it gets to the endpoint voltage, that's 90% capacity. If it goes the whole hour, it's 100%. You will occasionally find batteries that'll go 104, 106, 108, 110, or even better sometimes, which I think is interesting because lead acid batteries have been around a really long time, and they're made the same way, but every once in a while you get one that will cap way out there. But 85% is the minimum for airworthiness. Now, this is something I want to talk to you about because Scott and I were talking about the BC6000. COFCO is a company that manufactures these chargers and capacity testers, and we've endorsed them for over 20 years, and we still do. There's some availability issues with his units. A lot of back orders are into 2 and 3 years in some cases. You can find these units. I was up in Madisonville, Kentucky a couple weeks ago at a fly-in event, and a guy actually ordered one from Spruce. Don't know if they've got them now. I don't keep up with that, but you should be able, hopefully, to find one. But the BC6000 charges at a 1 amp rate. And so we came out with Technical Bulletin 13, which addresses cap testing of batteries at non-C1 rates. So if you have a cap tester that is only adjustable to 13 or 14, and you look down here at the bottom of that chart, and I hope you guys can see it. I know the writing is kind of small, and on your end it might be too small, but the RG2416 is a 13 amp hour battery. So if you test it at 14 amps, okay, if you look over the 85 C1 capacity at test rate over there on the far right, you're going to test it for 49 minutes. If you make it to 49 minutes as opposed to 51 minutes, you have 85% capacity. So you can use the BC6000 to test your batteries, and this TB helps reinforce what you're looking for when you do your testing. Cap test intervals for piston engine aircraft. Your first one is a year after installation if it passes above 90. The next one's at 12 months. If it passes between 85 and 90, you're going to do your capacity test every 6 months. By the way, that's the component maintenance manual. One of those is in every box of batteries that we send out of the barn. We kind of affectionately refer to that as the Bible because everything you need to know about, everything we're talking about tonight is in that book. So hang on to them as you get them. You can also go to our website, concordebattery.com, and pull it up there. So capacity testing, we've got another technical bulletin, TB14. In our CMM, it says that cap check intervals specified above are general recommendations. The intervals may be adjusted for specific aircraft or fleets once average life has been established. So TB14 is pretty cool. The way that it works is, let's say you've installed several batteries in your aircraft. You've been using Concorde for a while, and your first battery lasted 5 years and failed at 5 years and 6 months. And the second one lasted 5 years and failed at 5 years and 6 months. So the average lifespan of those first two batteries was 5 years. So when you install your next battery, your first capacity test is at 5 years. So that saves you a little bit of maintenance, a little bit of hassle getting that done, a little bit of money. If you do have to have it done in a shop, and you guys aren't doing them yourselves, this makes a very big assumption. It assumes that your flight profiles year to year don't really change that much. You're flying pretty much the same hours, flying pretty much the same flight profiles and missions when you go. If things change a lot, you need to go back to the book. But if year to year things are the same and you've established that, you can extend your maintenance profiles. So when should aircraft batteries be replaced? Well, it's pretty simple. When they don't meet minimum capacity. Now, I've operators who operate fleets, and they change them out every couple of years because they don't want to have missed missions for battery failure. I get that. But fundamentally, according to the book, when they won't meet minimum capacity, that's when it's time to replace them. So pillar 4 is battery minders, but we start with sort of an odd slide. We're going to talk about sulfation because fundamentally that's what battery minders help prevent. Again, the saying is you keep them fully charged when you're not using them, they'll last a good long time. So sulfation is on the right, hardened sulfate lead crystals. On the left, that's a healthy plate, new and spongy material. So any part of the plate that is devoid of a charge, that lead oxide begins to crystallize and turn into lead sulfate. And if you let it go, it will get bigger and bigger and harder, and eventually it creates a barrier that does not allow a charge to get through that portion of the plate to the healthy part of the plate. Think of a slice of bread with some mold on the outside of it. If you peeled that mold off, there's a little bit of healthy bread in the middle. Plate's just like that. That lead sulfate, it's creating a barrier, and it's not allowing the voltage to get to the plate. So that's what it is. This is how it happens. Leaving batteries discharged for long periods of time before recharging, like in avionics shops, or repetitive undercharging, like in avionics shops, or when you go out on a Friday and you're updating an avionics card and it takes you about 40 minutes to do it, and then you come out Saturday morning and you wonder why the airplane won't start, and darn, you forgot to charge the battery back up. Hey, I'm not pointing fingers. We've all done it. I mean, we've all done it, but that's how sulfation begins. It's typically that repetitive undercharging. It's why it's so important to keep the voltage regulator right, to make sure, because it takes about an hour to recharge a battery after you start the engine and you go fly. You need about an hour of flying time to fully recharge it. And the longer you let it go, the harder that sulfation is going to get until you can't fix it with a conditioning charge, which is a 16-hour process, but at a low amp rate. But you can clean up sulfate as long as it hasn't hardened up on you. So Skip used to say the simple key to making aircraft batteries last is to keep them fully charged when you're not using them. That's where it came from. I mean, he used to preach it till he was blue in the face, but it is that simple, guys. Just keeping them fully charged. That's what a battery minder looks like. Skip went to them in 2009 and said, I'd like you guys to make an aircraft battery specific maintainer that can be left on a battery for extended periods of time without damaging it. Because here's what you have to realize about battery minders. Most maintainers, like you would buy at AutoZone or someplace like that, Harbor Freight, they're designed for automotive batteries, and their charge rates are different. They're a little higher, and we're not talking about a lot. We're talking about a few tenths of a volt. But you leave one of those on long enough, and you can start to dry out the AGM mats, and you'll do the exact opposite of what you're trying to accomplish, and that's extend battery life. So VDC Electronics in Huntington, New York makes them, and they allowed our engineers to work with them to give them the voltage rates, the set points, the float voltages, everything we wanted to see. That's why we endorse them. We don't make them, we don't sell them, but they make a fantastic product. You know, I tell people all the time, I've probably bought 2 or 3 mechanical items in my life that exceed expectations, and battery minders are one of them. It's a really, really great product. And they're kind of fire and forget. You know, if you leave one on for an extended period of time, it's not going to damage your battery. But here's how you use them. So this is Technical Bulletin 15. We talked a lot about technical bullets tonight. You can go to our website and you can pull them all. You can download them all the ones we've talked about tonight, 13, 14, and now 15. So I want you to go down to the bottom where you see table 4. So this is how you use a battery minder. We always tell people if you fly once a week and you go at least an hour when you go, you don't need a battery minder. Okay. But if the airplane's going to sit for extended periods of time, this is the chart. So it's below 15C. Okay. That's about 59 degrees. And it's going to sit about once every 4 months for 3 or 4 days. Put the battery minder on it. Okay. Because when it's cold, aircraft batteries hang on to their energy. One of the things that happens every winter is our battery sales go up, but you wouldn't believe how many people are replacing good batteries. Because when it's cold, especially up in Wisconsin, when it's dead of winter, your battery's down 40% on power. Batteries are a lot like humans, man. They don't like it when it's cold either. They hang on to that energy. You got to warm up a battery to get something out of it. So when they're cold, you don't want to charge them as much because they're hanging on to their energy. You could charge, where you guys live, you could charge one up fully in late October and come back in March or April, and it's probably lost 1/10 of a volt. I mean, they'll hang on to their energy in the wintertime. So you get on up to about above 35C, which is, that's 95 degrees. Then you're going to do it once a month for a couple days because heat's the enemy. The hotter it is, the faster batteries self-discharge. That's why I tell people when you go to Sun and Fun in Oshkosh, we're always doing a promo where if you go buy a battery from Spruce or Wilco or whoever has stock or inventory on field, whoever's selling batteries, they don't have to have inventory. Bring me the receipt and I'll give you a $50 Visa gift card. And people say all the time, well, I'm not going to probably need another battery for, I don't know, 6 months, maybe a year. Well, guess what? You're good. So just take that battery home and go out to the hangar, and everybody's got a beer fridge in their hangar, and just stick it in the fridge. It'll hold its energy. You come back a year later, 2/10, maybe 3/10 of a volt, 2 or 3/10 of a volt. That's it. Now you want to get it out 2 or 3 days before you're going to use it and let it warm up. So you want to get the proper power out of it, but they hold on to their energy when they're cold. But that's the chart. That's in TV 14. Kind of explains how you use a battery minder. So here's the summary, guys. Pay attention to the open circuit voltage before you install your battery. Check it. Make sure it's 25.8, 25.6 and up. Go ahead and put it in. Go fly it. 25 down to 25 flat, 25.5 down to 25 flat. Put a charge on it. If it's below that, get a new battery and give me a call. Check those voltage regulators annually and check for parasitic loads if you need to. Excuse me, if you're losing batteries. Cap tests are the only way to determine airworthiness. Can't do it with a voltmeter. And just keep the battery fully charged when you're not using it. So we thank y'all for using Concorde battery. I am going to stop sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do that. No, not a new share.
You can just keep it up there. That's fine.
Okay. That's a good looking airplane anyway, right?
Yeah, it is. I was going to say, as far as I know, you guys are the only people that have a sealed battery that is FAA, approved for the type.
Well, I would guess back in the day, because, we didn't come around until 1977 and we probably didn't get into Cessna for a few years. I would venture to say OE battery for that airplane when it was new was a gill.
Mm-hmm.
But you can, we have STCs for all the Cessna high wings, and all of our 24-volt batteries actually are approved. It just, which one you use depends on your installation. Good for you guys with a hold down bar, because the 2416 is one of the more powerful of the small 24-volt line. But when it comes right down to it, AC 2327 came out in May of 2009, and it allows you to swap batteries as long as they're same voltage plus or minus a pound with just a logbook entry. So you don't even really need paperwork for legacy aircraft, because AC 2327 is a great document, probably one of the best ACs the feds have ever written. It deals with the engines and braking systems and cables and all kinds of stuff. And it gives you a lot more latitude now because parts are getting hard to find. And with batteries, they allow you to swap them out. As long as it's under 12,500 pounds, TC prior to 1980, and a 2025 Cessna would qualify because the original TC date's prior to 1980. It's under 12,500 pounds. It's not pressurized. All those things qualify for using AC 2327, which makes things a whole lot easier paperwork wise.
Well, excellent. I guess we're up for questions now. Is this
Yeah, absolutely. The floor is open, guys.
Chris, I have one. This is Matt.
Yep.
So you had mentioned that there's probably no harm in leaving the battery reminder on all the time, yet that bulletin, was drastically different than that. What is the downside of leaving it on all the time? Is that
So we initially for many, many years would tell you guys that, if you're going to leave it on for months at a time because you're going to be gone, no big deal. And in large measure, a lot of that's true, but we did see some problems recently with a handful of customers who were using battery minders like that. So we brought those batteries in, we brought some battery minders in. And what we discovered was for really long-term use, you can see a little bit of corrosion in the battery, which will ultimately shorten its life. And so we took about a half a step back and said, okay, guys, battery minders are still great products. Please use them. It's a big part of what makes batteries last longer. But we gave you some guidance in here, depending on ambient temperature, here's how often you really just need to use it. Because the cool thing about sealed batteries is they self-discharge 3 times slower than the old flooded batteries. So that's really a good thing when it comes to storage. But that's why we issued that guidance for the battery minders to let you know this is kind of how we want you to use them.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, it's Russ here. I've got a question as well.
Sure.
So in my case with my airplane, I have a rule that I fly it every 2 weeks or try to, but never sits more than 3 weeks. And I've had a Concorde battery in my old airplane and now in this one, and it always seems to behave very well with that. Would you recommend putting it on a battery minder when I'm always running the airplane at that interval?
Nah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What kind of life are you getting out of your batteries?
Pretty long. The one in my Cardinal that I had before this 182 RG lasted a really long time. The one in the current airplane I just replaced a year and a half ago, so we'll see.
Yeah, I would say to you, hey, whatever you're doing, it's working. That's one of the things about batteries is that they are very subjective. It depends on your frequency of use, on do you keep it fully charged or do you mess around with avionics or do you just take it out and run it every once in a while and then shut it back down? And so it's we've all left the master on once in our life at least. So that's kind of the tough part about it. But what you're doing is the right thing. And it's obviously reflected in the life you're getting out of them.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Follow-up question on that, Chris? If you're flying your airplane every 2 or 3 weeks and you're avoiding, extreme temperatures of cold or heat, what would you expect for a battery life that's treated that way?
An easy 3 to 5 years.
Hey, Chris, this is David. I just wanted to sit in on this, particularly because I've had a Concorde battery in my TR182 since September of 2012. The same battery. So I've gotten what I consider extraordinary life out of it.
That is extraordinary life, but we do, if you and I were standing at the booth talking in a couple of months, my next question would be, do you fly IFR?
I am IFR rated. I don't fly it very often.
Okay. So we do say in the book, that we recommend that you change them every 4 to 5 years, especially if especially if you're flying IFR, because, that's a good stretch for a battery, but flying IFR, there's an enhanced risk there when you're aviating if you're doing that. And so, it is important to tighten things up just a little bit. And so that's why in the CMM we talk about, hey, if you're doing that, 4 or 5 years, go ahead and replace the battery. But, if you're out flying on Sunday afternoon, going to get the $100 hamburger and skies are blue like they are in that picture, then yeah, not a big deal.
I just want to say I'm very, very impressed with your product and recommend it whenever I can, and I'll be back for another one when I need one. Which
Well, I appreciate that.
technically it's probably now, but
yeah, we are one of the last companies on the planet that still makes them mostly by hand, and that's a big difference. It's mainly in the inner cell connections. Our inner cell connections compared to our competitors are just there's so much more lead there, and they just survive a lot better, much more efficient at charge and discharge, and that's really the biggest difference. It's a labor of love. We've got quite a few people in our manufacturing plant, and the cool thing is there's third generation in there. Grandsons working with grandfathers. There's a lot of black art when it comes to making batteries, that you kind of have to pass down that aren't in the book, and we've got a lot of that knowledge, both up in the lab and out on the shop floor. Just a ton of experience out there.
Hey, Chris. Oh, go ahead.
Hey, Chris. I replaced my battery, I guess it was 2.5 years ago when I installed the dual electrowear on the system, just because of that. Do you have any recommendations for those of us who do fly with the dual electrowear?
Well, as far as anything, nothing changes as far as how you take care of the battery. And the recommendations based on how often you fly, whether or not you need a battery reminder, none of that changes. Yeah, Mike, I think Mike Koblick, Mike still owns Electro-Air.
Yes.
Yeah, I've known him for a long time. Really good dude. I remember when he first got that started, and it's been a real success story. But no, your battery requirements as far as maintaining them don't change.
Yeah, because that's what I did. I put the new battery in with the new system and got rid of the Concorde. I mean, got rid of the gill.
Well, I'm glad you did. For one, I want you using my gear, but number two, I want you using my gear because I know it's going to last a whole lot longer and be a lot more consistent for you. So that's cool.
And I decided to buy the battery reminder when I bought it too. I figure if I'm spending $1,000 for a battery, $800 for a battery, I might as well just spend a couple more dollars to take care of it.
Protect that investment. There's no doubt about it. I mean, typically at Sun and Fun and Oshkosh, every 20 minutes somebody comes and by and tells me, hey, I got 6, 7, 8, 9 years on my battery. I think I heard 10 years probably a dozen times. Heard 14 once last a couple months ago down in Lakeland. I mean, battery reminders are amazing pieces of equipment, but it just goes to proving the point that if you keep them fully charged and don't give them an opportunity to sulfate and you don't overcharge them, that's the balance, and that's what really stretches them out there. And it's important because they are $1,000. I mean, that's not cheap. I mean, nothing on that airplane is cheap, and the batteries are not excluded from that. So, I know we're doing a good thing when people ask me from time to time, they say, why do you guys spend so much time training people on how to make batteries last? You don't sell as many batteries. And I'm like, yeah, I know it's counterintuitive, but there's still plenty of market share out there. And when we take the time to do these sort of things, we hope that it builds some loyalty because we do want you to get the most out of it because we understand it is expensive.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Just a real simple question here. I'm fairly new to this plane, and I've had to do some basic database updates and things like that. Is there any kind of like internal clock that you use to how long I can sit there and play with my gadgets and not really put anything at risk?
Well,
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does. If you're gonna run that battery any more than about 20, 30 minutes, you need to put some energy back in it.
On the GPU.
I mean, it's hard to put an exact number on it, but in my mind, if you're out there half an hour doing stuff, go ahead and put a charge back on it.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Chris, Mike Pattison here. I got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Okay, so one thing, I got a Cessna 150 that I fly almost every day, and it has the Concorde in it, and it's been fantastic. I've had the battery for about 5 years, and it sounds like I got to replace it, but I flew it today and it started right up. So so great job with that. But I'm going to rather than to take to unfortunately have to remove the battery cover to put the battery tenders on it. And
Right.
I've been
Got
looking
it.
for
Got a solution.
the best solution. And of course, I found the battery minder for the airframe interface, but it's for a 28-volt system. Do you know if they make it for a 14 by chance?
So if you want, well, to answer your first question about the battery being hard to get to, there's a company called Audio Authority that's in Lexington, Kentucky. A gentleman named John Sisk owns it. Started out in the stereo business, but he's an aviation enthusiast, flies a Piper single engine, and he makes a lot of charging equipment for aircraft batteries. And he makes a kit that allows you to mount a plug, an Anderson style connector, somewhere in the airplane that's easy access, like the baggage
Okay.
compartment or something like that. You just wire it through the solenoid. It's a minor alteration. It works on everything from a G5 all the way down to your airplane.
Okay.
And the kit, I don't know how much the kits are. They're probably in the $100 range, but it's Audio Authority in Lexington, Kentucky. And what part of the kit comes with the plug on the battery minder side. It has an Anderson connector on one end that matches the plug you'll mount in the airplane, and then the other end matches the pigtail for the battery minder itself. But
Got
it
it.
makes it a whole lot easier to charge your airplane.
Okay, great.
Charge
Thank
your
you,
battery.
sir.
Charge your battery.
And yeah, I'm actually on the website right now. I'm looking at it. So okay, great. And then two, I fly a Citation sometimes, a CJ1, and of course it has Concorde batteries in it, and they do a great job. But I've been in the field, and of course the airplane has got a maintenance, and maintenance says it just passed a capacity check, and I'll have the battery on, and it'll show right around 24.5 volts or so. And you know how those turbines are, if you got to have the right power at the right time, or you'll get a hot start or whatever. But I've had the batteries where they just essentially fall on their face after like having the battery on it for like 4 minutes, withdrawing like maybe like 15 amps. I mean, very not even fit, maybe 3 amps. I mean, maybe the nav lights are on and the emergency bus is powered. So like, if it's passing a capacity check, what do you think that's indicative of? Do you think the battery just simply getting tired? I mean,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things you can do, because you're familiar with that cockpit, just like you driving around in your truck or your car. I mean, you're familiar with that cockpit when things don't sound right or look right. So when you start an aircraft, you automatically see the current meter in your airplane peg, and it's got a high charge rate or high current rate. And when, normally that starts coming down fairly quickly. When you start seeing it not come down as quickly, that means there's resistance building in the battery, and it's really the first sign that she's getting tired.
Sure. And that kind of rolls into my third question. So I was hot starting a Mooney. The thing wouldn't start for the life of me. And, of course, there's no published limitations in the AFM. There's very little guidance for the airplane just because it's not that complex. But in short, it was pretty much a brand new battery, but I ended up pumping when the airplane did get online and the engine did get online and the alternator was all online, it started, it really put a lot of power back into the battery. So what's your recommendation in regards to like how much you can really recharge that battery without really upsetting it?
Well, you mean as far as voltages you don't want to go below?
No, just like, once you get the alternator online, you see that amperage charge. I mean, it's pegged in the positive, the battery's taking a lot of power. At what point do you say, well, this is just too much and it really upset the battery? I mean, is there any type of like just general
No,
Okay.
the more important thing is you just don't want to get your battery below 18 volts.
Got it.
You get below 18 volts, and you are likely to get into what's called reverse polarity. And Skip used to say you need to catch that within the hour of it happening, and you got a 50-50 shot at getting your battery back. And the only way to determine it is to go ahead and charge it back up and do a capacity test. Because if it's got reverse polarity, it's not going to come anywhere close to passing.
Mhm.
But it's very subjective. You know, what you were describing, you know, you were starting for a while, you really were hard on the battery, took a lot out of it. It's subjective every single time. You know, in a case like that, it's obviously going to take longer than normal to get it charged back up, and you're going to see that current hang in there for much longer. But you know that because you know what the start experience was like.
Right.
But on a normal start, you know, which is 99.9% of the starts you do in an aircraft you fly a lot, you kind of know, you sense, you know when that gauge is going to start dropping. And so when it doesn't start as often as it used to, and it was still a normal start, then that's kind of your first indication it's getting tired.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, I got another one. This is Scott. From early on, the beginning of Pillar One, you were mentioning, that we should contact you if we get a new battery that indicates that it's sat on the shelf for an extended period of time at the distributor. How would we know that? Is there a date on the battery, or how would we know?
So if you want to define the born on date for a battery, you just give me the serial number and
Okay.
I'll look it up in the system and I can tell you what the born on date is. So, it used to be much more of a problem, honestly, than it is now, because prior to COVID, sometimes batteries would sit on the shelf for 6, 8, 10 months, or maybe even longer. And the manufacturer, the distributors, they get out there and they'll boost charge the batteries, but on occasion they don't. And to protect our brand and to protect you, that's why we really harp on checking that voltage. But yeah, to find out kind of what the life was like, if you bought a battery from me that was manufactured in January of 2024 and you just bought it. Well, I can pretty much tell you that because we only build to order. We don't build for stock in the factory. So the battery was built January 24th. It probably showed up in the manufacturer on February 10th. So that means it sat there for 12 months. And all the more reason to ask the distributor, hey, did you boost charge this battery? It sat on your shelf for a year. And then obviously you're checking the open circuit voltage. And if it's right, you know that they did keep it fully charged. Because our batteries can sit on the shelf 2 years before they need to be installed. Technically, you could still install them as long as they meet capacity, because if they sit up for over 2 years, you got to do a capacity test to ensure airworthiness. But you can still install them. There's just not going to be a warranty. So if you bought a battery that had manufactured a year, 364 days, and you put it in that day, that's when the warranty starts.
So if a battery sits on a shelf at Aircraft Spruce for, I don't know, extended period of time, a year, whatever, not or close to that, will they actually do an open circuit voltage check and then charge it?
Yes, they will.
Spruce does that. Wow. Okay.
Now, the good news is for them, for the last 4.5, almost 5 years, they haven't had to do that, because the government told us in May or April of 2020, the only 2 safe things were to do were go play golf or go fly your airplane. So everybody started dragging out airplanes and changing batteries. And, we never had a supply chain issue. We've always had what we needed to build batteries, but the demand skyrocketed. We were an 8-week lead time company for 44 years. And in August of 20, we were at 14 weeks. And by January, we were at a year. And that was all demand related. And so we had to go back. You guys are getting a little inside baseball here. We had to go back to our distributors and say, look, guys, you can't place scheduled orders for 8 weeks out anymore. You got to tell me, if it's May, you got to tell me what you need next May. Well, the pushback was, well, how can we do that? Well, look at your usages. You've got your usages for the last few years. You know what you need when you need it. The wintertime's busier. And it took some of them a while to really embrace that. And we have a very liberal policy, selling to our distributors. If Spruce orders 1,000 24/16 and 8 months later, it's time to ship, and they're in the 7th month, they can call us and say, hey, I only need 200 of those batteries. And we don't penalize them. We ship them the 200 because we can send those 800 to a lot of other distributors that are waiting on them. We'll just fill orders quicker. So it took a while to get our distributors on that page. Now, since our lead, we have a second factory in Atlanta. We've doubled its size in the last year. So a lot of our lead times have come way, way, way down. Some of the batteries do still take a little bit of time, but we've got quite a few part numbers that are getting really close to what it used to be. It just depends on the part number, but the distributors have gotten a lot better. So inventory is much more readily available now. That's why you couldn't find them. It was hard to find. You couldn't just call Spruce. You might have to call 5 or 6 distributors before you found one. In 21, 22, 23, 24, by then it was a whole lot better. But that's the inside baseball of how all that went down.
So for our type, the RG2416, they're fairly common. We don't have to be concerned about lead times now.
No, because that's what your counterparts that fly 24-volt Bonanzas and Barons, they fly the 2416 as well. It's a very popular battery. So there are lots of them out there in the market right now waiting to be sold. But to your original question, Spruce batteries typically sit on the shelf anywhere from a day to maybe a month or two these days. They sell everything they bring in for the most part. So you're getting a very new battery these days from any distributor. They're not really sitting on the shelf like they used to.
Hey, Chris, do you guys do will call at your shop in City of Industry?
We do not. We're in West Covina.
Yeah, I'm in Upland, so I'm not too far.
Okay, so I'm not a SoCal guy, so that might still be considered City of Industry. I don't know.
Got it. Okay.
But no, we don't. Yeah.
Okay.
The closest place you could go to would be up to Corona to see Spruce.
Got it.
Are there any other dealers? Like Spruce is like top of everybody's mind, but are there any others that would have a lot of stock of your batteries?
Oh yeah, we have somewhere between 15 and 20 domestic distributors. You have Falcon Crest, you have Southern Cross, Aero Performance, you have obviously BDI, used to be known as Aviol. Not too many branches anymore, but they still have the central location in Dallas. Quite a few distributors in the United States. You can go to our website and click on the button that says where to find, and it'll give you the rundown.
Hey, Chris, what are your thoughts on lithium batteries? I know that's kind of like the new thing in GA.
Yeah, it is. You see EarthX getting, in fact, quite a number of STC approvals for, Cessna aircraft. So the funny thing is we've been building lithium ion batteries for a very, very long time, much longer than EarthX or even True Blue. We built them for the F-18s as a test article for, a decade or more. So we have a lot of experience with them. We are a very conservative company. And if you follow the news at all, you know that lithium ion batteries can be very nasty critters when they get into thermal runaway. You have a very difficult time extinguishing that fire. And, our issue has been, how do you make a lithium ion battery safe enough to be put on an airplane? And we're in obvious disagreement with some in the industry. We've been working really hard for the last decade to make a lithium ion battery that we feel like is safe enough for civil aircraft. And Dave Vudatakis is our resident PhD. And he has told us that we are probably within a year or two of having a main start lithium battery that we'll offer to the civilian market. It will be a turbine main start battery. I don't know that we'll ever have a lithium battery for your aircraft, for the smaller GA aircraft. It'll probably just be a turbine main start. Because, let's face it, it's half the weight and a third more power. And when you get into the turbine world, you're talking 82 to 96 pound lead acid battery that, is anywhere from a 42 to a 53 amp hour battery. Well, our most popular turbine battery, the 44, weighs 82 pounds. It's 42 amp hour battery. The lift version of that weighs 41 pounds and it's a 65 amp hour battery. So weight is the holy grail when it comes to aviation. And when you're talking big airplanes and you can save that kind of weight, you might be willing to go that route. Now, it's extraordinarily expensive. Those big batteries I was talking about, they're thousands of dollars, $4,000, right in that neighborhood, more or less, depending on which flavor you get. And the lift version of that's in excess of 20,000. So there's a lot of decision making, going into that, but primarily it's safety, and that's why we've taken so long to develop a lithium battery that we feel is safe enough to be in an airplane without an ejection seat.
Great.
Hey, Chris,
Thank you, sir.
one of the things people don't think about on lithium batteries is the rate of charge they take. It can, if unless you've got a limiter for charge rates on a lithium battery, you're going to burn your alternator up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. But it's, that can happen. But for companies like mine, when you get on this subject, especially, it's just all about safety. Because, if a Tesla lights up, you pull over and you call 911. You get out, if you're at altitude and that thing lights up, you have got a real problem on your hands. Obviously, do we see them falling out of the sky or where? No, we don't. But aviation's all about calculated risks. So it's a very interesting time to be in an otherwise boring segment of aviation, which is the battery business. Things are changing a lot. Back in the 90s, your laptop was obsolete about every 14 months. And battery R&D is moving at that pace and has been for quite a long time. And it's exciting to see. A lot of competition out there, a lot of thought about it, a lot of research. The air taxis are starting to come out that are electric. They still need another step change. We still need another step change in weight and power to make that much more viable. But we're close. Dr. Dave says we're really, really close to that. So a lot of stuff coming down the road when it comes to batteries. But I don't like risks. Unnecessary risks, I should say. Anybody else? Still on?
Well, yeah, we're all still
Okay.
here. I see everybody's
All right,
still
good.
checked in. This has been great though, Chris. It's much appreciated.
Well, I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's always great to get together with a group because you're interested. You want to know. I mean, knowledge is what it's all about. The more you know, the safer you'll be, the more efficient you'll be with your equipment, the less money it'll cost. Everybody's happy. So that's the driver.
It is remarkable that David has a battery that's 13 years old and still works. That's just amazing, man. It
is. It's incredible. The most amazing story I ever heard was in Oshkosh about 9 or 10 years ago. A guy told me that he got 13 years out of his battery. I think it was a 12-volt RG35, and he put it in his F-150, and it had been in the truck for 4 years.
That's awesome.
Jesus. Holy smokes, that's great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's fun to work for a company that makes really good stuff.
Yeah, that's impressive. That I didn't realize they were all built by hand. Where are they? Where's the plant that builds them?
So home is West Covina, California, which is about 15, 18 miles east of downtown LA, right just north of I-10, a couple blocks north of I-10. And then we built a new factory about 8 years ago in Atlanta. If you're familiar with Charlie Brown Airfield or Six Flags, right off the south end of the airfield, we're right behind Six Flags in a 250,000 square foot facility. Been there, like I said, about 8 or 9 years. Time flies. And been building batteries there, continuously expanding the part numbers that we're building there to help offset, the capacity that we knew was coming because we've been growing a lot, especially the last 10, 15, 18 years. But even then, through COVID, I'm thankful we had that place. And then we doubled its capacity last year. Because we have 90,000 square feet in West Covina, and we use about 105, it feels like. When you got 250,000 square feet, you can build batteries just fine in 90,000, and that's what we were using. But we doubled the capacity, and so we still got plenty of room for growth, but we needed it to meet the demand.
That's impressive.
All right, Chris, I got one more really important question for you.
No worries.
So I'm going to replace my 150 battery probably next couple weeks or so. Do you offer discounts for R182 members by chance?
We do not.
Oh,
we do not.
darn.
It's a great question, and I would ask it as well. But yeah, we don't really offer discounts to any of the groups, the clubs that we support, the type clubs like yours that we support. We do like when Scott and I were talking about it. If you guys get together and raise money once a year, you have raffles or things like that, we're happy to provide a certificate that you can raffle off for a 16. We're happy to do that.
Okay,
We'll
We'll have to
Thank
do
you.
that now. We'll plan
that's
that.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys need to plan a get together and get with get with Hartzell, get
There you
Tim
go.
Gaunt to give you a starter gift certificate, stuff like that. You can raise some money
Maybe a propeller. That'd be great.
and get that raise some money and get that BC 6000 for the group.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. If anybody's interested in staying on for a couple of minutes and talking about how we might acquire a capacity tester that we could share amongst us, that'd be cool. So, all right,
I'm
Chris.
on my second Concorde battery in my R182, and after hearing all you guys talk and questions and the presentation, which has been excellent, and the questions too, I'm on tie down, and I've always been for 17 years. Got 6, almost 7 years out of my first Concorde, which is actually pretty good.
Yes, it is.
That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. My shop, I've got 3 battery menders. So I like the Concorde battery, and I love the battery menders. I've got 3, one specific to the Concorde. My shop's
those are the ones you want to use, because a couple years after we developed that with Battery Minder, Gil went to them and they made them one too, but their charge rates are a little bit higher. So that's why the Battery Minders say either for Gil use only or for Concorde use in that yellow band at the top.
Oh, interesting.
So you do want to make sure that you get one that says for Concorde only. And when you go to batteryminder.com to buy it, you'll see it. Can't miss it.
Yeah. I pull mine out once a year, maybe. It's a little bit, I've done it several times. I can do it and pull out on the ramp on mine, I don't know, in 10 or 15 minutes. I like to do it 2 or 3 times a year. I maybe do it once a year, and then my shop does it once a year, and they leave it on the battery mender for a week, at least a week while it's an annual. I take it home maybe once a year and put it in my garage. But those battery minders, they're excellent. I've got another one for my lawn tractor battery. I used to have to replace my tractor battery once every 2 to 3 years, even with on a standard charger. Well, I haven't replaced the most recent battery in the lawn tractor in probably at least 8 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. My up until April, my wife drove a 2011 Honda Odyssey, and that's the most electrically consumptive automobile on the road. You get about 18 months out of a battery. And I started using battery minders, and I got her last battery to last 5 years. And when she traded it in, they came out and asked me about it. They said, "How'd you get that battery to last that long?" And I said, "Just battery minder. You just look after it." And she didn't drive it much on the weekends, so I throw it on the weekends, and got 5 years out of it.
I wish I could keep my Cessna in the garage. I'd like my more.
You need to be where I've always wanted to be, in a fly-in community.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Then your airplane is in your garage.
All right, Chris. Well, we greatly appreciate your time tonight. And I'm sure we'll be in touch, and we'd love to have you back on and revisit this where maybe we're ready with more questions or something. So
absolutely. Hey, thanks for the invite.